Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, a Baxter Professional Services production. Welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show, where we're experts in nursing and experts in business. I'm Tina Baxter, your host. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We interview nurse leaders and encourage them to tell their story. Today's guest is Farah Laurent, and today's episode is how one nurse took massive action to make the leap to entrepreneurship. Tired of feeling trapped in a job that no longer fulfills you? Is your nursing job no longer the fun-filled adventure you imagined? Find your passion again through nurse entrepreneurship. Step out into the light and come feel the sun. Join the Nurse Shark Academy today at thenurssharkacademy.biz and come feel the sun. And welcome to the Nurse Shark Academy Show. The Nurse Shark Academy Show highlights nurse business owners and others in the healthcare field who promote entrepreneurship. We interview nurse leaders and encourage them to tell their story. My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining confidence, skills, and the freedom to live your life on your own terms. You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Join us and support these wonderful nurse entrepreneurs and leaders. Today's guest is Farah Laurent. And Farah is the owner of Farah Laurent International Nurse Coach out of New Jersey. And she is also known as the Badass Nurse Career Coach. So welcome to the show, Farah.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure to be on. I've been following you for a while, and I love all the work that you do. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Well, I first of all, I just want to say thank you for following me, because sometimes, it gets lonely and you wonder, is anybody listening?
Yes, definitely.
So the affirmation is great. So thank you so very much for being a supporter. And so I want to ask, as we always ask the first question, what made you become a nurse? How did you get into nursing?
Sure. So great question. So I don't have like a crazy story. I just have like the traditional kind of like something in me. I always enjoyed taking care of people. When I grew up, When I grew up, I always used to play with my dolls and put Band-Aids on them. So, sorry, this is my 3-year-old over here. Put Band-Aids on my dolls. And then I knew I wanted to be in healthcare. I didn't know quite, I wanted to be a nurse. And then I realized after having interactions with nurses, I'm like, that's what I want to do, because nurses have the most connections with their patients. They spend the most time with the patients. And I'm like, that's the type of nurse I want to be. And then when I saw the show, Trauma, Life in the ER,
Yes.
fell in love. I was like, that's the type of nurse I want to be. I'm like, I want to be one of those badass ER nurses. And that's what I wanted to do. And I always tell the story how like in nursing school, sometimes you don't always have the most supportive faculty. And one of my instructors was like, Farah, what type of nurse do you want to be? I'm like, I want to be
Oh, looks like Farah froze for a moment.
I saw the show Trauma, Life in the ER. I said, that's the type of nurse that I want to be, because there's so much excitement, adrenaline. And then, of course, my clinical instructor asked me what type of nurse you want to be. I said, I want to be an ER nurse. She's like, you'll never be an ER nurse. She's like, you're too unorganized. You should stick to med surg. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how can an educator say something like that? So, of course, I didn't listen. And as a nursing student, we got to pick our like top 3. So me and another student got to go to the ER. So I was very lucky to get to the ER and met some great people there, made great relationships, and then ended up applying, got the job as a nursing student. Before I even was able to take my boards, they hired me into the ER, and it was a trauma hospital. And I started 2 days after graduation, when most of my, friends were not even working. So I thought that, that was great. So that's why today I empower other nurses to pursue what it is that they want to do. in terms of, any specialty coming out of school. I'm a big advocate for that.
Well, there's a lot to unpack right there because first off, congratulations on landing your dream job, right? Right
Thank
out of school. And I think that's important to have those connections
you.
that get you started. So I want some of our listeners that are hearing this, particularly if you're a nursing student, if you have the opportunity to work in the hospital as a nurse tech or a tech on the floor, take it.
Yes.
Take it. Because usually those are the nurses that will be hired
Mhm.
first. You get first
Yep.
dibs on all the good spots, all the good shifts. You get first dibs because they already know, like, and trust you because you work for them. And so
Exactly.
that's very important. And that was key for me um, as well. I interviewed for two positions right out of nursing school.
Hmm.
One was in med surge, yeah, right? I didn't want to do med surge. I'd done it on the unit, right? I did med surge as a tech. I didn't want to do that, and my
Hmm.
dream job was psychiatry. That's
Hmm.
what I wanted to be. So I interviewed for both. I'm at two different hospitals, and the one hospital just kind of haphazardly, offered me the job in med surge. And I called the other hospital back and said, "Hey, I've got this job offer for med surge, and I need a commitment from you all. You want me? You gotta let me know this is a go. Otherwise, I've got to take this other job." Unfortunately, they said yes, and so I started in my dream job. But I
That's so
say,
funny. That's so funny you say that. Sorry to
yeah,
to
no,
just piggyback off that. So I actually interviewed for the two ER hospitals. We only had two hospitals in the small city I grew up in Canada. So I applied to both ER positions. I interviewed for both. And the one that I didn't want, I would have taken either one, but the one that I didn't want called me first to offer me the job. But I really wanted the trauma hospital, just like you did. So I said, you
mhm.
know what? I'm going to call this recruiter up and be like, hey, so I just got the other offer, but I really want to work with you guys. And she gave me the offer on the spot. And I was like jumping up and down. So what you did is very similar to me. And a lot of people wouldn't do that type of stuff. But I'm like, if you want something bad enough, you just got to go for it and put yourself out there. So that's great that you did that.
And that is so true. But the other thing I want to talk about is the fact that you had a nursing instructor that tried to discourage you from
Right.
what you wanted to do. And I certainly had that too. They were like, "Oh no, everybody should do med surge before you pick a specialty." And that was not for me. I chose psychiatry for a reason. And yeah,
Hmm.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah. So that's why today I say that what I do as a nurse career coach and just in general, even before starting my business, I'm all about shattering like old nursing narratives. I'm like, let's get rid of the old school type thinking because there are so many roles in nursing. And as we're talking about today, even non traditional roles like nurse entrepreneurship, we need to tell this new generation of nurses that there are so many things available for nurses, and we don't have to be put in this cookie cutter box like, oh yeah, we're this is the only thing we can do. Right? There's such a variety of roles, and nurses do so much, and I think the public doesn't know that, and sometimes our own, younger novice nurses don't know that because they're not exposed to it, or they're not being, told that by educators or in nursing schools. But I certainly try to amplify that voice and say you can do what you want to do. It's possible. So I try to like really tell them that there's so many different roles available, and I do a lot of LinkedIn lives and things like that to share that message with them, and some writing as well.
And that's so important to hear because as an educator myself, I was just thinking med surge. And again, hats off to the med surge nurses. Don't get me wrong. Med surge is kind of like the primary care for doctors, right? Family medicine. This is how I kind of look at it as a nurse practitioner. That a lot of times, the doctors come out and they want to get into that specialty like cardiothoracic or neuro, so that they have, that specialty niche. Whereas the ones that are kind of doing the family medicine, it's a lot different pace. And I think that med surg is kind of like that. It's kind of like the catch all for nursing. So, med surg is always a great foundation and you can
Yes, it
always
is.
move and do different things. But the beauty of nursing is
Right.
that you don't have to stay in one specialty. You have the option to move around. And I
Right.
think that's so
Exactly.
important.
Yeah, and a lot of nurses might think like, I talk to a lot of nursing students and new grads, and as a nurse career coach, I work with all nurses, even nurses wanting to transition to different areas. But I just let them know that you don't have to wait to get into like your dream job. Some of them like, oh, I'm just gonna work my way up to get to ICU, or I want to be a CRNA, but I'm just gonna work my way up to ICU. I'm like, what are you doing? You're just wasting time, right?
Yeah.
So I'm all about, time is precious. So why would you want to waste time in an area you're not passionate about when you can just go straight in? So that's why I promised to myself that I would one day be an educator, and specifically also be a clinical instructor so I could really inspire nursing students. And I got to do that in New York. I worked at NYU as a clinical instructor. It was one of the best jobs I ever had. And I loved it. I'm like, I want to be a fun educator. I want to inspire them and tell them like, you can do whatever you want. So we had a lot of fun doing that.
So you worked in the ER, you became a instructor, and I guess also professor at one time, right?
Yeah, I did transition right after the ER. Transitioned into education. I was a clinical educator on a couple different units for ICU and smart ortho unit as well, and then did the clinical instructor, the academia route as well. Yeah.
And I think that's important for nurses to hear, because you can do different things at different points in your life, and there are some nurses that are in academia. And
Hmm.
again, I did that adjunct faculty, taught clinicals. I did all those things. Got a master's in nursing education. Was
Yeah.
a nurse educator at the hospital. So you can use those skills in a variety of different ways. And
Hmm.
just because you start off somewhere doesn't mean that's necessarily where you're going to end up, because their opportunities are always out there, and it's just important to keep it open. So how
Yeah.
did you then transition from working in academia and at the bedside to then becoming or wanting to become an entrepreneur?
So that's a good question. So, basically, I'm a big advocate for nursing and the nursing profession. I always try to speak very highly of nursing because I honestly believe it is one of the best professions in the world. However, I also try to bring light to a lot of the issues in healthcare. And real talk, I highlight the things that also are not that great. So some of the things that I ran into in my 13 years in the emergency department, I was also a travel nurse. I left Canada and went to New York City to do travel nursing because I was like, let me marry my love for traveling and nursing and let me head out to New York because I grew up in a small city in Canada. So I did travel nursing for quite a bit. But when I came to New York, especially the first one of the first hospitals, I realized there is a lot of discrimination and a lot of microaggressions, right? And I saw it more for some reason here in the US. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in Canada, there's definitely issues there. But I saw it more when I came to the US. And then I realized that although, like you said, you have all these advanced degrees. I had my master's in education. I had all these certifications. Um, I applied to an educator role and multiple other roles in the ER, and I wasn't getting them. And I was like, something is wrong here, right? And then it was a lot of like, during your evaluation, it's like, are you really evaluating my work performance or like your personal opinion of me and my personality, right? Because I was somebody who was very direct. And I remember
Mhm.
one time one she had just got this assistant manager role. Like we literally worked together a few weeks back, and she was doing my performance eval. She's like, Farah, you can be very direct at times, and I'm like, okay, nothing wrong with that. I'm like, I'm an ER nurse. What do you want me to do? So I felt like there was a lot of favoritism and things like that. So when I realized that, I said, I'm not going to grow here. I feel like my growth is being stunted. So I say, I'm taking my talents somewhere else. So I had to leave that organization and go somewhere else. But everywhere I went, I realized there was a lot of, right, like bureaucracy, red tape, a lot of drama. And I love nursing. You can try to stay away from it, but sometimes advancing to the top, it's very hard if you're like a vocal person and you're passionate, because if something wasn't working, I was going to say something, professionally. But
Hmm.
I think sometimes certain leaders don't like to hear what is going on, and if you suggest changes, sometimes it's not taken the like kind of the right way. So I decided, I said, you know what, I don't like being micromanaged and all this type of stuff. So what's another way that I can also have some creativity and freedom, and hopefully build to one day full entrepreneurship. Um, Throughout my career, I was always a natural coach educator. I always fell into people coming to me, asking me for questions, for guidance, especially career guidance. And I found myself always doing like resumes, cover letters, giving people tips. And I thought, well, why don't I just turn this into a business? And that's what I did. I had no clue what I was doing. And I started it in the summer of 2021. And at the time, I was still working. And I thought, well, what is my employer going to think? Because I was trying to build a presence on social media, and some people just don't understand it. They're like, "Oh, well, I saw
Yes.
I saw you on LinkedIn, or I saw, like, what are you doing?"
Hmm.
Building my personal brand, and trying to get this business out there, right? Because you mentioned, you have to have that know, like, and trust factor. And if you're not visible, no one's gonna know you.
Hmm.
Nobody's gonna be able to like you or trust you and buy from you. Like, if they don't know what services or products you're providing. So to me, it was entrepreneurship to me is flexibility and freedom and creativity, and the power of generating your own income. To me, it's everything. So that's why I look up to entrepreneurs, and I'm still on my journey, but I'm just so excited about it. And I still love doing education and all that stuff, but you know
Well,
I-
but you're still doing it, but you're doing it your own way.
right. Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that when you are vocal and direct, and a person of color or represent a minority group or anything like that, that sometimes it can work to your detriment, because I have had people tell me that I am too intimidating. Yeah. I'm like, how so? Well, you're so smart. Uh, um, thank you. What
What
I
does
mean,
that mean? Like, thank you. I don't. Yeah.
I was thinking, like, are my boobs too big? What's happening here? Am I having a Elle Woods moment? What's happening? But yeah, I actually got feedback from my supervisor at the time in my very first supervisory job, and my
Hmm.
ED said, "Well, you're just too intimidating." And it was because an employee went to her crying because we had some people come in, and a whole bunch of people come in for in crisis. And I said, hey, I know you're getting ready to take your lunch, but can you at least kind of triage this person while I deal with these other situations, and then take your
Right.
lunch afterwards?
Yeah.
Well,
Delegating,
right,
teamwork.
that makes sense. I'm the supervisor, I'm making a call, judgment call here. She goes, so she's like, okay. And then later I find out, oh, I was in tears because my special needs son, I go home every day at this time and bring him his lunch, and now he's all in a meltdown, and blah, blah, she's all this crying and stuff. And I'm like, so why didn't you say something then? What's the
Right.
tears about? And so I brought that up to my boss, and I kind of said, I think she's just trying to manipulate me, because this wasn't something to cry about. This is, if you had said something, we might have been able to troubleshoot and come up with something different. But because you opted not to say anything, this is
Right.
the result. And she's like, well, you're too intimidating. And I'm thinking, how is that?
Right. But the thing too, right? Like you mentioned, because in the ER too, there's a lot of stressful high stress moments. It's life or death. We do get psychiatry patients that come in psychosis or different emergencies. So you do have to go into leadership mode and delegate and be direct and all that, right? So I think some people sometimes take it the wrong way. And I think that's why nursing schools need to also uh, teach nurses, communication and also advocacy, like you talked about,
Yes.
right? And the fact that sometimes, you know, you do have to be in like go mode to take care of what you need to take care of.
Yeah, we were able to get the persons taken care of, and I had a conversation with her. But I did, it was fine. It worked out to where we worked together very well after that because we
Yeah,
came to mutual understanding. But in my mind, I was just like, I got patients in crisis in front of me.
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
By
yeah.
the way, this wasn't another nurse. This happened to be a social worker. So, and I'm not. I work with social workers every day, but I
Right.
think their discipline is a lot different than how nurses' brains work.
Yeah, yeah.
And in nursing brain, we're like, fix problem now, prevent problems later. And they're like,
Exactly.
well, and I'm like, no, no, there's no, this person needs to be admitted, and we've got 3 admissions coming. Once they're done with their intake, they're done with them. They don't do anything else.
Right.
We take them back to unit and do all that stuff. So I think that was where some of this was coming from. And I was very new to the role, and they hadn't yet learned my director approach because I'm direct as you are, and in fact, that my current boss has mentioned that to me. He said, you're very direct, but that's a good thing. That's okay. I was
Well,
like,
yeah, yeah, and I want to say too, like, and it's funny because in some of my other roles, like my leadership roles as a director of education and academia, it's almost like I feel like some people almost kind of not laughed, but almost laughed at me when I talked about my leadership style being like an authentic leader and like servant leader, and that I'm very much into collaboration and stuff like that. Because in some places, I'm not going to say where, but it can be very rigid. And I just want to clarify, I'm not one of those. I am flexible in my leadership style, but authoritative leadership, that's not what I am. And I know I'm not saying that you are too, but some people misconstrue that. They think just because in your communication, if you're direct in certain situations, you have to be. They take that the wrong way. And I think sometimes I had trouble as a leader setting some boundaries because I think I was a little bit maybe too lax at times. But I think, you find your leadership style because it depends on the situation. And because of my ER background, I'm like, listen, nobody's dying over here. So it's okay. Like, I got this. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, it's not, everything's not an emergency sometimes. So I
yeah.
think,
My always go to is, well, did you die? No, then we're okay. We can work this out. And so, yeah, I'm very collaborative in my approach as well, and I appreciate
yeah.
that. I want authenticity,
Mhm.
and I'm very big on truth telling. So
Yes. Transparency. Yes.
yeah, hey, if I screwed up, I'm going to say it.
Right.
Right?
Right. Hmm.
If you screwed up, I'm going to say it. Not to say that I'm going to put anybody down. No, but I want you to learn from that situation.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
even when I'm talking with my coaching clients, I said, okay, you had this setback. What can we learn in this situation? Because failure is part of learning.
Yes.
You've got a 3-year-old. How many times has your 3-year-old fallen down before she was able to get up and walk? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's big in entrepreneurship because I think that's why nurses can be great entrepreneurs because a lot of the traits that we need and skills for nursing are very similar to entrepreneurship. So I think that's why some nurses can make great entrepreneurs because of all our problem solving, and we're able to just deal with like you said, failures and just quickly come back from them. Learn. We love to learn, right? Yeah.
I always tell nurses, I said, hey, we eat crisis for breakfast every day, right? We can
Exactly.
handle this. And I say, don't say I'm just a nurse. That is one of the most hated things I've ever heard a nurse say. No, I say turn it around and say that you are a just nurse, meaning that you fight for patients, you advocate for your patients, and you
Yep.
fight for your profession. You're an advocate for your profession. You're a just nurse. You're never just a nurse.
Yes. Yes. And I think this is why I love platforms like what you have here, with podcasting and streaming live, because I think it's important for all nurses to see and hear about other people's experiences, and also understand that, you know, it's okay to speak up, because I think a lot of people feel stuck where they are. They feel like they can't take action and move on. They're afraid. They're like, oh, I don't know, I've been doing this whatever specialty. Like I talked to a nurse recently. She's like, I've been doing NICU for so long. I want to do L&D, but I'm afraid. I don't know. And then she said she saw some of my content on LinkedIn. She's like, oh, you're kind of inspiring me to like take that leap. I was like, yes. Like, what's gonna happen? They're gonna train you. You know, you'll be all right. You'll just transition. That's it. Like, you
And
know,
there'll still be a baby, right?
and
You
that's
just got
the
to add the
beauty.
mom into the mix now.
That's it. That's the beauty. And this is why I say to nurses too, like, I follow a lot of people, you know, that are marketers and multi-millionaires like Alex Hormozy and Layla and all these other people. Because honestly, I think entrepreneurship is just all about just taking action. And, you know, I follow Alex and Layla a lot, and he really says like the difference between people that really succeed and who don't are like really the ones who just take action and they're very consistent in whatever they're doing. And that you have to do more of the stuff, or of whatever it is. So like for me, when I first started going live or doing videos on LinkedIn, like I sucked. People probably think I suck now, but I think I've improved. Right? It's all perception. But I think you just have to put yourself out there and think, like, stop getting too much into your feelings and into your head. I read this quote, I can't remember who it was, but he said, get out of your head and get into your life, right? Like,
Yes.
stop overthinking. And the issue is people have a problem in planning. And sometimes I get stuck in this planning phase where you're constantly like over consuming information, reading so many books. Like I bought so many books, right? And then it's like there's no action. So it's like you just got to keep taking action. So, you know, things can actually happen. You got to reach out to those clients or whatever. You know, it's just about taking action.
Well, I haven't seen your lives other than to say I did see your appearance on J HUD. So tell us, how did that come about? I was very excited to see that.
Yes, you know, I was just so grateful that it happened. So basically, I'm somebody who believes, right, um, in God, right? I'm not gonna go into religion, but I believe in God. I'm a woman of faith, and I feel like when you truly believe something deep down, and I know it's just a show, whatever, like, okay, no big deal. But I'm just saying, anything in my life, I've committed to writing down my goals and working towards those goals. And I have sometimes, you know, as a human, I think we sometimes tend to go a little bit into the negative mindset, and it's easy because we're humans. But I try really hard to stay positive, and I feel like manifesting things really does work. And they talk about the power of attraction and all that stuff, and I really believe in it. So to me, I'm like, hey, why can't I be on the show? Let me just go on the website. I looked at some, you know, some of the contests or different things that they had going on. So I just really applied, and I just pitched my story and all that stuff. And it probably took about 6 months or maybe even 8 months. Like I forgot about it. But I told my family and I told my mom and some of my friends, I was like, I'm going to be on the Jennifer Hudson show. Like I just spoke it into existence. And some of them were like, yeah, you will. And I was like, all right, cool. And then I just get a call one day. It was around Christmas time, and it was one of the producers. She's like, hey, I'm just, you know, reaching out to get to know you a little bit. And that was how it started. She started just talking to me, asking me a couple questions. And then a few weeks later, she kind of tricked me. She was like, oh, one of our producers is going to call you. So you're going to have like a FaceTime call with them. And I was like, okay, cool. And then next thing you know, my phone rings and it's not a producer. It's freaking Jennifer Hudson. So that's why I was like so excited. I was like, you guys got me. And I didn't even know what to say. I was like, sometimes when you're just like so surprised, and I was like, what did I even say? I felt like I didn't even like talk about my website or anything, but I was like, you know what? I didn't want to be all like salesy or too promotional. So I was like, it's okay. It worked out. So I was just so happy to see her. I've been following her since like American Idol, and I love The Voice. It's one of my favorite shows. So she was on The Voice. I used to watch it, and I loved when she like threw her shoe at the That's my favorite part. I just love her. She's amazing. She's so
I love that duet she did with Tom Jones.
so awesome, and I love her. She's just so great. So I was so happy that it was able to come to fruition. So
Well, yeah, now you have a national platform on a nationally syndicated TV show. So I thought that was awesome. I said, I'm glad to see nurses out there doing more things like that and being in the media.
yeah,
It's very hard for us to get our stories out.
yeah, and I recently met. I don't know if you know her, but she's huge in the media space. Her name is Alice Benjamin. She is America's favorite nurse. If anybody has branded herself, like she's been doing this for years, but I recently met her and I joined one of her masterminds. And this is what I have to say about entrepreneurship. I'm a nurse career coach and I have multiple coaches and I invest in multiple programs all the time to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, should I be spending this money? I don't know. But like professional development is really the only way. It's like, it's going to get you so much further when you're connecting yourself with these other coaches and things like that. So I went to this mastermind and I'm going to join her Media RX. It's something that's coming up in June. Really just talking about how nurses can be more visible in the media and how to get there. So I'm excited to connect with her. So you should definitely check her out too.
I definitely will look her up and maybe we can get her on the show.
Yes, I'm sure she would love to promote her thing. I'm always shouting at other nurses because I
Yeah.
think it's important to celebrate, all nurses and what other people do, especially nurses like you in entrepreneurship and other nurses, because there's not a lot of us, and it's good to really connect and.
It is. And what's interesting is that I'm seeing more of us come out. And I get excited about that. There's more than enough out there for us. There's no competition here. I just get excited to see that. And the reason why I saw your post on LinkedIn and it was saying about being on the show, and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna throw it out there and see if she'll, take a bite, come on my show. I mean,
Of course,
Jennifer Hudson, but but I may put that in your byline as seen on Jennifer Hudson.
yes, and I probably need to do a better job with that stuff. And actually, funny thing you mentioned all that stuff because I was talking to somebody and they're like, "You better put that on your website." But I'm not really good with all that tech, and I hired I'm talking to another nurse career coach that I hired with like for strategic type of things, and she just really recommended I get a virtual assistant. So I'm actually in the midst of hiring somebody. So I'm gonna see if they can help me with all that video editing and stuff like that. And maybe I will put that somewhere on my banner. Me and J HUD, we're cool. We're cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're like practically friends. I mean, first name basis.
Yeah. If I end up on J HUD's show or when I get invited, I'm definitely going to be putting it on there. You're gonna see me and her everywhere.
Yes, and I love, just talking to different people, being on different podcasts and stuff, because I think it's so cool meeting other nurses. So, super, super cool. And like you said, you need to get your name out there if you're in business and you're trying to promote yourself. And this is what I teach my clients all the time. Because early on as a nurse, I didn't understand that I had a brand as a nurse. And I'm like, I don't know if you know it or not, but you are the brand. Like you are a brand. And it took me a while. It took me years to understand that. And I think if I could have done something better earlier in my career is I would have had more mentors early on, and I would have networked more.
Yes.
Because to me in the beginning, I used to think, well, I don't want to just like keep talking to this person because they're going to think that I'm like trying to suck up to them, or like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to say the other word, right? I'm like, I don't want to do that. But if you think about it, that's how people really get a lot of professional advancement, is through networking and knowing other people, building relationships. And that's just how the world works. Like, and I'm like, sometimes things are not fair, but that's just how it is. That's how
Well,
that's
I'll,
how it is.
I'll give you a great example for this. How did I get into grad school? When in undergrad, I was a nursing student on the Indiana State Nurses Association Executive Committee as a student rep from
Hmm.
the student organization. The current president of the organization was the dean at the University of Indianapolis at that time. So fast forward to about a couple of years after I graduated my BSN, I decided to go back and get my master's, but I was just taking a parish nursing class just to kind of test it out to see if I could work full time and go to grad school full time. But I
Yeah,
applied to the school and took it for graduate credit. And she happened to be the one teaching the class that semester. So she was there teaching most of the class. And
that's
so when
awesome.
she saw my application, she said, "Why aren't you in grad school?" And I gave her, "Well, I've already taken the GREs like years ago. My scores are so old. I don't want to retake it. I have another degree in biology." So I had to take the GRE for that and pass the biology subject
Mhm.
test to pass my major. So I was like, I'm not doing that again ever. And so she said, "You need to be in graduate school." So I get a letter in the mail that says, "You have been provisionally accepted in the family nurse practitioner program. Show up to class on this day." And that's how I got into grad school. Now,
That's
that's not to
awesome.
say
That's
I didn't have all the credentials and submit the transcripts, because remember, I applied to get graduate credit for this parish nursing course that I was taking, that the hospital was sending me to and paying for,
that's
because I work
awesome.
for a Catholic. And
That's
so it
amazing.
wasn't like I didn't have the credentials. I just was scared, and she knew that.
See, there you go. That's what I'm saying. And that's what we do as coaches and things like that. Is like we push people into action, right? Because a lot of my
Yes.
clients, and I'm sure yours, like, I don't know, I don't want to do it. It's like, do it. And you just gotta
One,
like help
one
them
step
a
at a
little bit,
time.
help them along a little bit.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Just take one step. And that's what I tell my clients even now in my
Yeah.
clinical practice. Do one thing. Just one thing.
Hmm.
That's all I ask of you. Do
Right.
one thing.
Right.
Get up every day and write down something in your gratitude journal. Do that one thing every day. We'll work
Oh
on it.
yes.
We'll build on that. Yes. Yes. And you do have your
Gratitude journal.
90-day gratitude
90
journal.
gratitude journal on Amazon.
Awesome.
I got to
Awesome.
throw it out
Yeah, there
there.
you go. And so you do have, that's a great segue, because you do have another book that is available on your website. It's
Yes.
Nurses Making Money Moves, a nurse's guide to starting a business. And yeah, so for our listeners, head on over to her website, and that's nursefarah.com. That's NURSEFARH.com. And you can
Mhm.
pick up that book as well. I'm so excited.
Yes. And
So,
listen,
go ahead.
this I just did it on my own. I didn't go through a publishing company and all that. I didn't have time for that. I was like, I need a book, and it's a workbook. You can actually write in it. So I was going to speak at the National Nurses and Business Association, the NMBA,
Hmm.
in Las Vegas in August. And I'm like, I need to put something out because I need to have an exhibitor table. So that's one of the things that pushed me to write it sooner. I'm like, I don't got time to wait for no publishing company, and I don't have like $10,000, $15,000 to do all that right now. So
I understand that completely. I'm finishing up my first book. I have an ebook, but I'm finishing up my first book, and yeah, I get it. I found my own way to get it published as well. And it's like, let's just
congratulations. That's
yeah. So I'm trying to get the first draft to the editor. Um, And I have a local editor, so that's also nice too.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's
Yeah.
somebody I know. All right, so we can. Well, let's see. What's our last question is how? What information or what piece of advice would you give to a budding entrepreneur? As we've been talking about entrepreneurship and nursing throughout this time.
So I would say definitely um, it's all about professional development and learning. So I will say something as easy as like YouTube University. So for example, follow people number one that are doing what you want to do. So whatever space they're in. Um, so say you want to start maybe a nursing agency, then go follow somebody who's already done it. If you want to start a med spa, go and talk to a couple people who started med spas, right? Um, I kind of help a little bit with the startup, like if anybody wants to be a coach or consultant. But I don't go like deep into all the stuff. But if you want to be visible on social media, like LinkedIn is a great place to be because there's other business owners there. So if you want to do from business to business or business to consumer, it's a wonderful place to be. So be visible on social media, particularly
Yes.
LinkedIn, or hang out where your people are. But LinkedIn is like there's a billion users, and I think that's a great place to be. And then I would say reading books has really helped me. So YouTube University, reading books, and then getting multiple mentors and not career coach. I mean, yes, you can contact me if you need career guidance, but get other business coaches as well, because and they don't necessarily have to be a nurse, right? So I go to a lot of when I can business type events because you can meet other business owners. I also was in the novel. I forgot it was something that I got introduced to, and they had like some program where I was with other women business owners. Are you familiar with NABO?
No, I'm not.
Oh, I have to send you that information, but it's basically women-owned businesses and it's national, and then they also have state chapters. So it's a
Okay.
great organization. I'm still a part of it of the New Jersey chapter. So just getting in touch with other business people, especially women entrepreneurs, I think you can learn a lot from them. So yeah, that would kind of be my thing, and then just take action because there's not going to be one straight way. There's always so many ways that you can get to what you want to do, and you're constantly going to be adjusting as you go on your path to entrepreneurship because that's what I've been doing, tweaking things, and you just kind of go along. I also speak. I'm a speaker. I also write. I'm a contributor to Minority Nurse. So that's
Yes.
another good way to get out there, get your name out there. If you're maybe like super shy about being on video, then maybe try to write more so you can get your name out there. I recently wrote an article that Sigma featured. It was like 5 tips on how to find a healthy work environment. So doing things like that will also help amplify your voice. And especially if you're into business, just start writing. And even on LinkedIn, you can write articles, you can have a newsletter, things like that. You can be on podcasts.
Yes, you can be on podcasts. There's so many different ways that you can get the word out about what you're doing. And
Yes.
I happen to agree. I read tons of books before I launched my current business,
Hmm.
and I continue to read books. And I do have my own business coaches, so I'm a coach that has a coach. And I'm saying if you have a coach and they're not coachable, then that's probably the wrong coach for you. Um,
Hmm.
and so I hired a branding coach to help me with my branding. I have a business coach to help with my legal nurse consulting business. So there you
You
go.
should read this book.
Who's
Brand
book?
Flip. For you.
Oh, for
Brand Flip.
Flip Brand.
Yeah. Brand Flip. Yeah, yeah. Either
Okay,
way.
okay.
You talked about branding, so.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And so that's one of the reasons. Yeah, I like the startup process. Yeah, I'm one of those consultants and coaches that like to do the startup. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
once to get you to where you need to be, to have a great launch for you, a smooth launch, so you can do all the stuff that you don't like to do, like the foundational pieces. That's what I work with, and so that when you launch your business, you have a good start. Because I've seen too many people start their business and then just jump in and do the thing, and then it falls apart, or they have a hurdle or hit a regulatory problem, and they're scrambling to fix things, and now they have to dismantle it and put it back together. And I've had to do enough of rescuing that I thought, you know what, why don't we just start on a good foundation? And so that's why we started the Nurse Shark Academy. But you have, for our listeners, the new nurse mentorship program, and you have 20 seats that are available. So if any of our listeners are interested in getting to that program, head over to nursefarah.com and give her a message, or an email her at farah@nursefarah.com. Or you can reach out to her on LinkedIn, and we'll put all that information in our show notes for you, so you can click the links and find her book and find all the different things that she has for us. But she has that for our listeners. And also that if you go to her website, you can have her free interview guide on nursefarah.com. So
Thank you for all that.
Yes, I want to thank you for spending such great time with us.
Yes, thank you.
An interview. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to the Nurse Shark Academy show. Those of you that are watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you are listening to us on Podbean, don't forget to give us a comment on Podbean as well, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you that would like to become patrons of our show, we would greatly appreciate your patronage, and we have special content available just for you that are patrons. So I want to thank you for tuning in to the Nurse Shark Academy show. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nurses, are you burnt out, frustrated, looking for something new? Are you looking for more? Nurses, are you ready to feel the sun? You will dream big and expand your consciousness as an entrepreneur. Your nursing license is your key to freedom. Join the Nurse Shark Academy at the nurseSharkAcademy.biz today. Thank you for listening to the Nurse Shark Academy show wherever you get your podcasts, or watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you'll know when all of our episodes come out. If you want further information, you can contact us on the nurseSharkAcademy.biz.